Good evening. Welcome. It is Hard Facts on 92.3 Nigeria Info. Sam Oracle Chinedu here. Too many things happening, too many conversations to hold, connected to lots of things that reflect a brand new era. Well, let's start where we can with what we have and make the most. The former sole administrator of River State, retired Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, says his journey in the state was about restoring dignity to the state and not about any man. He said this in a statewide broadcast yesterday night.
I thank you, the people of River State, resilient, patient, and hopeful. You stood firm through the storm and believed in the possibility of renewal. This journey was never about one man. It was about restoring dignity to governance and giving you back what is rightfully yours. The Garden City must never lose its fragrance.
Okay. How time flies. Now Ibas is referred to as former sole administrator. Well, Ibas says his achievements in office reflect the determination of Rivers people who don't want their state to slip into paralysis.
The mandate has been accomplished. Law and order have been restored. Governments have been conducted. Boards and commissions have been reconstituted. The state budget has been passed by the National Assembly. These are milestones of progress that belong to all of us because they reflect the resilience people determined never to state slip into paralysis.
That's interesting. He also asked Rivers people to support Governor Siminalayi Fubara to succeed.
Now, as I hand back the reins of leadership to His Excellency Governor Siminalayi Fubara, I do so with confidence and respect. I urge all Rivers people to support him wholeheartedly because leadership and followership is a shared responsibility. No matter how competent and no matter how clear a vision may be, it can only come to fruition and thrive with the active support of citizens. For me,
he further commended Rivers people, his aides, security agencies, and the president for all the support he received. Now, that was from his final broadcast last night. But on a controversial note, Ibas bowed out and carried out one last assignment. He swore in Iyingi Brown as a substantive head of service. In his speech, he praised Brown as a thoroughbred professional who is critical in her thinking.
And for our new head of service, you will all agree that she certainly deserves the recognition. A thoroughbred professional, courageous and dogged fighter for the civil service, I must confess that I benefited immensely from her wealth of experience and great institutional memory. Her insights and critical thinking on all matters affecting the state is quite inspiring. Madam Head of State, our service, I trust that you will continue to distinguish yourself in the discharge of your duties.
We don't have to be too smart to imagine that there would be reactions. So reacting to this, rights activist Charles Jaja criticized the move, saying it is worrisome. In an interview, Mr. Jaja said the action seeks to promote favoritism over merit and seniority.
Ibok Abbas just wants to create problem for Governor Siminalayi. If not, why would he make such an appointment in the midnight of his moving out of government house? And I think the onus is on Governor Siminalayi Fubara to uphold integrity in civil service by removing Iyingi Brown as head of service, whose elevation did not follow the rule of civil service. This is not about witch hunting. It's about maintaining integrity and to demonstrate commitment in transparency in governance that which seeks to promote favoritism over merit and seniority.
You don't need the prophet telling you there's a lot to discuss. My goodness, without even asking questions that are already issues on ground. But President Bola Tinubu, as you definitely know, has announced the end of the 6-month state of emergency imposed on River State, declaring that Governor Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy Ngozi Odu, and members of State House of Assembly will return to office from Thursday, the 18th of September, 2025. President Tinubu, in a statement released on Wednesday, said the state of emergency first proclaimed on March 18 was necessary to arrest the total paralysis of governance that has gripped Rivers at the time. It therefore gives me great pleasure, in his words, to declare that the emergency in River State shall end with effect from midnight today. That's yesterday, of course. Now, it was a statement signed by the president. My guest is a journalist, a public affairs analyst, and a state of emergency survivor. Mr. Olalekan. Do you consider yourself a survivor, sir?
We are back to River State.
Welcome, Mr. Ige. How you doing?
Thank you very much.
Would it be safe, valid for someone to say happy democracy or happy end of, I'm still trying to phrase it properly, happy end of emergency rule or happy post-emergency rule? Yeah, I think that's better.
Welcome back to democratic rule.
Okay, that works.
Yeah.
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the appointment Ibas made literally hours before leaving, which I don't understand how to understand it. But before we get there, now the president has called off, or let's say the 6 months has ended, so we're back to status quo. The first reaction to the president's statement was, and some people already shared that on WhatsApp, which I didn't notice, but I'm glad they pointed it out. The emergency rule was declared in a televised broadcast, but the proclamation of its end was a signed statement, which we first saw on social media, because people were hoping that Tinubu would address. What do you make of that?
But there is nothing, excuse me, please. There is nothing, excuse me, please. There is nothing so much, about that. It's not about whether, while declaring state of emergency, he made a national broadcast, and to call it off, he needs to make another national broadcast. To me, that's really not what we should be discussing. He's the president, and of course the constitution says that he's also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, meaning that he has a lot of prerogatives that he can exercise, and I'm sure he has just exercised one of those prerogatives by just coming out with a statement. What is by far more important is that the state of emergency has ended, whether by national broadcast or by written statement signed, by the president. Remember too that when the president made the gazette out of the declaration of state of emergency, there was no national broadcast to it. I'm sure a lot of people won't remember that there's an official gazette to justify why there's state of emergency in River State and how that 6 months, should be administered. They didn't make a national broadcast out of that. And I'm also very sure that a lot of Rivers people, added to a lot of Nigerians, did not even see that gazette to know what it contained and how it should have been operated. The most important thing to me is that the state of emergency has been called off.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, retired Vice Admiral Ibokata Ibas spent his time in office, made his way out yesterday, and for some reason decided to make an appointment that he was not in any way going to enjoy. So I don't know if we're thinking from a common sense perspective, he obviously maybe was appointing for Fubara. I don't even know how to ask the question if it was the rationale behind that, because you can't even answer what he was thinking. But what do you make of that last minute appointment?
I would say shocking in the sense that he had all of 6 months to have made whatever appointment he needed to make. After all, he inaugurated several boards before he left office, and I was surprised when I woke up this morning and heard that he had appointed a substantive head of service for River State. The woman that's been appointed had been acting since the departure of the then head of service, Dr. George Wike. Ian Gibran had been acting as the head of service of River State. So I woke up this morning and I heard that news that she had been appointed the substantive head of service. I do not know what is the civil service procedure, but I've heard from a lot of people, at least today, that there are other people that are senior to her in the civil service structure and who ought to have been given consideration to be appointed head of service. Then some other people have also argued that the prerogative to appoint head of service lies with the governor, or in this case, the administrator, as at yesterday. So in doing that, he may have exercised this prerogative to appoint the substantive head of service. There are a lot of arguments, surrounding this appointment, but the coming days will make things clearer. They will be able to know whether it is right, whether it is wrong. Some have even said that, look, the substantive head of service now, Dr. Ian Gibran, will be retiring sometime in October. Some have made the argument, this afternoon where I was. And if that is true, then it means that the tenure may just be short-lived. That's why I said, look, the coming days will reveal a lot of things.
After the break, we'll be talking proper about the governor and what he stands to face on his return. But stakeholders have urged the major players in River State at this time politically, that's Governor Fubara, FCT Minister, lawmakers, and supporters of different sides, to sustain peace. They keep throwing that word around. Now, I'm concerned, what could the governor or any other person mentioned possibly do to jeopardize this peace that they speak of at this time?
We knew what was on ground before state of emergency was declared, and the only way we can subvert that peace process, as agreed so far, is for state for. So one of the best things, just and I can prefer as the way going forward, is that look, all of the camps, both sides, the governor and the House of Assembly, we need to quickly mend whatever outstanding fences that have not been mend those fences, and put the greater interest of Rivers people at there's so much so much to be done. We are about rounding up the year 2025. 2026 is just around the corner, and for political reasons 2026 will discuss
Campaigns.
vastly as to what will happen in 2027. So both sides, we need to quickly mend fences and ensure that they come out with policies, programs and actions that can make the state grow immediately. We've suffered in the last 6 months, so the time is lost already, and they can only gain the time today from now on.
We will eventually get into this, but people have been reacting to demands that the assembly have already started making on day one of the governor, asking him to submit a few things. After the break, of course, we get into this, but we're hoping that whatever represents peace in the interest and progress of River State, all the parties involved play their part in sustaining the said peace. After the break, we talk about the governor. Stay with us.
With information comes power.
We give you more power.
Welcome back. The easy way to say it is emergency rule is over, but if you need something official, President Bola Tinubu has announced the end of the 6-month state of emergency imposed on River State, and Governor Siminalayi Fubara is expected back at the government house to resume duties as governor today. My guest, Mr. Olalekan Ige, for the purpose of this conversation, I introduced him earlier as journalist, public affairs analyst, and emergency rule survivor. You're welcome once again, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so Fubara should come back at some point. We're not quite certain if he has made his way to the government house or not, but at some point it's going to happen. What are the challenges that he would very likely begin to face almost immediately and moving forward?
Well, I think it's to, I think if he returns, is to probably use 2 or 3 days to review all that had happened during the state of emergency.
Okay.
Look at what the administrator had done. You understand? If contracts had been awarded, and they have not been cash backed, it needs to review the entire process so that it can begin to know where to head to. Before he was suspended, he had awarded a lot of contracts. He needs to urgently, very urgently, review almost all of those contracts. For example, the Port Harcourt Ring Road. I'm sure you're aware that even the then administrator of River State complained that Julius Berger was asking for variation to the tune of almost the original sum for which the contract was awarded. So it meant that Julius Berger had left site for the Port Harcourt Ring Road. The governor will need to quickly look at that because that road, the project had gone too far for it to be abandoned. So probably he needs to quickly engage Julius Berger and find out the quickest way forward to ensure that that project comes to a final conclusion. There are several other projects he had awarded, the Trans-Calabari Road, the Elele Omokuru, all of those projects he had awarded. He needs to know what is the current status. The House of Assembly building, remember, was awarded, and IBAS on several, I think on 2-3 occasions went there just to be sure that it was up and running. The governor will need to see that to the end. Then there are a lot of roads that require urgent government action, even as at today. And that's why I said earlier that the 6 months of the state of emergency didn't do the state any good. So there are a lot of roads that require urgent state attention. I could give you one. For example, the road linking East-West Road and Ikwe Road, that is the Obiwali Road, is in a terrible state. The NT Mboba Road, there's a major part that has become very, very unpassable in the last 2 days, causing huge traffic. Look at the Rupoku roundabout, heading towards the airport.
There's
it's in a terrible state. Even under the bridge at Rupoku that Julius Berger abandoned is causing huge pain, to those living around that area. Look at the Okporo Road around Rumodara axis. I'm just trying to mention the few that I've seen that will require urgent attention from the governor. A lot of schools are still without the required number of teachers. I'm sure Rivers people have been complaining that many schools in Rivers State don't even have the complement of the full teachers they need at this point. It means that employment will have to take place. The civil service is also lacking civil servants in some areas, so employment needs to take place in the civil service. Employ teachers, doctors. A lot of primary healthcare centers require attention. There are so much challenges. There are so much challenges before the governor that he has very little time to even think of any other thing than to face these challenges and leave his name in the sands of time. There's actually no time for the governor, unfortunately. So he needs to get down to business and focus on all of this. Take them one by one. Get the required complement, probably of commissioners. I do not know whether new commissioners will be coming on board. Remember that following the Supreme Court judgment, only 6 commissioners were screened by the Amihule Assembly. The others had automatically gone because since they were not screened by the Amihule-led River State House of Assembly, it meant that they were no longer commissioners. So technically speaking, as of today, if the governor returns, there are only 6 commissioners that were validly screened according to the Supreme Court judgment. That's the Commissioner for Information, Commissioner for Sports, Commissioner for Women Affairs, Commissioner for Health, Commissioner for Agriculture, and Commissioner for Youth. Those are the 6 commissioners that were screened by Martin Amule. So what would happen? It means that as the governor is coming back, he needs to quickly get the full complement of commissioners that that can match his determination to leave lasting legacies. And from what we've heard today, the Assembly is already calling on the governor to forward the list of commissioners. And a source was just telling me before I arrived there that, look, it was part of the agreement that the governor was going to forward list of commissioners for screening, and that the Assembly is only acting based on what had been agreed during the reconciliation, process. So there are enormous challenges, before the governor, and unfortunately, there's just no time. We just have about 4 months to the end of the year, 12 months of next year, and you know that by December 2026, it will be politics for 2027. So he has barely a year to ensure that he puts finishing, touches to a lot of projects he had started, and award some new ones that must also come to a conclusion before he leaves as governor, of Rivers State.
All right. It's important that you are a part of the conversation. The numbers to call are 0817 923 0002. 0817 923 0003. WhatsApp is 080-903-06416. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube at Nigeria InfoPH. You can watch, listen, and engage. While you were speaking, Mr. Ige, I kept thinking about the difficulty of what is before the governor of Rivers State. Now, a lot of these projects have compiled, right? If he were still around, you know that some of the projects were being executed. And at this time, thanks to the passing of time, a 6-month period, we would have been way beyond this stage with many of those projects. But the fact that it was paused for the entire 6 months, yes, we heard that the administrator had inspected some of those projects, but we had no idea the pace of work or if there was any work at all. And now Fubara returns 6 months later. Many of those things are exactly the way he left them. And because of time, it's worse off. So I imagine that time has passed. More money will be spent.
Naturally.
There's just a lot.
And remember, there is, I think part of the resolutions of the members of the House of Assembly today is about the governor also presenting an appropriation bill. Appropriation bill, for those who don't know, simply means presenting a budget. Now, there's already a budget passed by the National Assembly. From what the Assembly said today, they need an appropriation bill to cover for the rest of the year. So I'm wondering, the bill passed by the National Assembly, to what extent did it cover? They say it's a year's budget, over 1 trillion.
Yeah, 1.4 trillion.
Yeah, so if you look at the time the National Assembly passed that budget, it means that the next time we should be talking about an appropriation bill in Rivers State should be next year. However, from what I know, there's also what is called supplementary budget.
Yeah.
Supplementary budget happens when you discover that there were certain things
you need to make up for.
Yeah. Right? So you can present a supplementary budget to the Assembly to cover that. There's also what is called virement. Virement simply means that an amount of money was budgeted for something before, but you now need that money to be spent on another thing. You can go to the Assembly, use via the virement. Virement simply means you are moving money from one item to another item, so you can use it to do all of this. So the budget has passed by the National Assembly. Is the Rivers State House Assembly saying, look, it had come to an end? Or is it that there were certain things that were not captured in that budget by the National Assembly that needs to be altered? Now, if it's going to be altered, remember, Rivers State House Assembly didn't pass the budget.
Yeah.
So how do you alter a budget?
You are not a part of it.
Or maybe in order to cure that, maybe that is why the Rivers State House Assembly is now saying, can you present an appropriation bill? Even if the appropriation bill is what was submitted to the National Assembly, so that they can also scrutinize whatever that is in that.
There's something about it. I have Jack Rich on the line, so I'll be speaking to you, Jack Rich, in a matter of seconds. There's something about it that doesn't feel right? Because remember, the bill was presented by the president to the National Assembly.
Yes.
So Fubara was not in any way a part of that.
True.
It doesn't make sense in any universe, Mr. Ige, that 1.4 trillion naira is done at this time. Now, remember that at the beginning of the emergency rule, there was no budget because budget was a part of the problem that led us here.
Was nullified by the
So
Supreme
the
Court.
1.4 trillion was within the emergency. It wasn't even in the first month.
was passed around, I think, around August.
Yes, it was not in the first month, because I remember that Ibach was given allocation. They said they finally... So, for the first month of emergency rule, there was no 1.4 trillion.
True.
So, you're talking about maybe 4 or 5 months. And now, you're asking for supplementary... You know what?
No, that's what I'm saying. Look, maybe it is in realization of not being able to amend what is in that budget. Maybe that is why the Rivers State House of Assembly is now saying, look, Governor, we are expecting an appropriation bill from you. I'm not speaking for the Assembly. I'm just trying to hazard, what could be on if you are saying Fubara should not present an appropriation bill. Because there's a budget existing already, which has been signed into law, and it has to run for the course of 1 year.
The truth is, in the coming days, there's a lot we'll find out about Rivers State that we did not know. There's a lot that will be shocking. And, well,
maybe one of the things we might need
Mr. Ige and...
One of the things I need to have access to is the official gazette of the president.
Yes, indeed. We'll definitely need that.
Emergency.
Jack Rich from Rumokrushi, thanks for staying on the line. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening, Oracle.
Good evening.
Yeah, quite an interesting topic. Politics is usually the only major news in River State that is not going. Well, the governor is here, the House of Assembly is here, and democracy is back. We'll continue to watch, but I don't think we are still going to have that good governance, honestly, because the whole thing is just, I don't know. They won. I don't know if actually the governor has spoken to us, but already the Assembly is demanding for appropriation bill to be submitted. I don't know how that's going to work. So I think in this whole drama, we are going to have part 2 of this whole drama. So, but I just hope that we'll continue to have peace. But definitely, politically, peace is going to lead us till 2027.
All right.
That's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack Rich. Mufasa calls from NTA Road. Good evening, Mufasa.
Yeah, hi, Sam. Good evening, and good evening to our distinguished guest.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Dr. Olalekan again, highly respected.
Thank you.
Well, Sam, as expected, the entire state is agog, with the anticipation and expectation of seeing their elected governor. I mean, it is not out of place. But I think my concern and worry also is about how this whole, urgency of wanting to see the governor present an appropriation bill. And if going by what we are seeing now, it will not be assumed that the over 1 trillion naira that was signed by the president has outlived his time. I do not know if there is a way that the governor can demand for the sole administrator or the president to act.
Hello? Mufasa, are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, we couldn't hear you for a bit.
Yeah, I said I'm wondering, I don't know if Olalekan again would be able to explain to us if the governor, now that he has come, and the House of Assembly is demanding for an appropriation bill, can the governor demand for accountability from the sole administrator or the president who has sent it for the worth of 1 trillion naira of paper money? Because what we are seeing now, we can assume that we have outlived this time.
Okay.
And we do not know what was spent for what and why. So it's just confusing to some of us. As this whole River State politics and governance is a different kettle of fish altogether.
Okay, Mufasa. Thank you very much. Your voice was breaking there. Ms. Age would shortly answer the question about accountability, but let's take Ezekiel's call from Ubimini. Hello, Ezekiel. Good evening.
Good evening, COSO, and your guest there in the studio.
Good evening.
That's what you see. I don't know if you carefully listen to the former sole administrator. He talked about restoring somebody's integrity. Whose integrity is that? He talked about structure. Whose structure is that? Then according to him, that he had succeeded for his mandate or whatever assignment they have given to him. Whose mandate is that? Because if you ask me, the mandate is the LGA election which he had conducted, and is not in his position to do so. I don't know if you understand me. Now, coming to the project in the state, which he had visited some areas, those projects have not been abandoned. See, I want to let you also know that imagine what happened at the 9 minutes, at the 11th hour of the day, appointing the head of service. What does that interpret and show to us, the Rivers people? In fact, the worst thing that had happened to Rivers State is this emergency rule.
All right, Ezekiel, thank you very much. We have to move on now. Mr. Ige, demand for accountability. Can Fubara ask the President of the National Assembly to explain 1.4 trillion?
This is a tough one.
Yes, indeed.
Now, I'm saying it's a tough one because remember my argument earlier. Governor Fubara doesn't have any time again. If you ask me, this is my personal opinion, please. Mm-hmm. Governor Fubara should not bother about what had been spent. If you're asking for accountability, then you are saying, look, he needs to probe the 6 months tenure of IBAS. Does the governor have that time to go into probing 6 months of a tenure that has gone?
The governor can multitask, Mr. Ige.
He doesn't have that time to multitask.
As he's probing.
That is now distracting him. What he was voted for is to deliver service to Rivers people.
Yeah, but there's a reason there's a cabinet, right?
Remember,
there's a reason there's
when you want to probe,
there's an assembly.
There's no time limit to probe.
Okay, true.
Yeah, so if there's no time limit to probe, I'm just speaking my personal opinion here. I'm saying, look, he doesn't have any time. As soon as he resumes, all he needs to do, IBAS work with permanent secretaries, call all the permanent secretaries. I need a brief of what has gone on in your ministry. Were there approvals that were not cash backed, or were there projects awarded through your ministry? What is the status? He needs to have a full brief of what had gone on.
Yeah, that's a form of audit if you think about it.
No, if you are saying audit,
it's surface level audit.
A surface level audit of what was awarded, what was not awarded. So what can we do? Can we start now? It is not about saying we want to set up a 10-man panel, a 50-man panel. Then let us invite IBAS. Let us invite the President of the Senate. Let us invite the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Let us even invite the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Because there is a gazette that guided the activities of IBAS while he was in Rivers State. I'm saying that, would you have that time now to invite Akpabio, to invite Tajuddin Abbas, to invite the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? If there will be a probe, and as Assembly is almost suggesting that, look, they need to examine, the 6 months of IBAS, maybe the Assembly can embark upon, that journey.
Okay,
but for the governor, he needs enormous time, and that time I started counting from today.
I have a few things to say to that, but Jude from Amuma is on the phone. Hello, Jude.
Yes, Sam.
Good evening.
Good evening, Sam. By the appointment of the sole administrator for Rivers State, it has set a very bad precedent. And it pains me when the House of Assembly is calling for what they call it appropriation bill, whereas 1.4 trillion was budgeted and handed over to us in 6 months or less than 6 months. I had expected Vance to might have come up, or before he strode out yesterday, to have made a public announcement or a public handover of how that money was being spent. But he didn't. And now the House of Assembly is calling for another budget. Budget for me is supposed to be a public document. Oftentimes, and they are calling for another budget. That's why I say it's a very bad precedent.
Okay.
I don't know where we are going from here.
All
This
right.
country we are doomed.
We're not doomed, Jude. We are.
I think to quickly correct Jude, IBAS has not spent 1.4 trillion. So let you not think that IBAS has spent 1.4 trillion. No, that's 1.4 trillion. I remember the budget is an estimate of what you are expecting to earn.
Yeah.
And it is from what you earn that you can spend. So you could have a budget of 1.4 trillion, and at the end of the year, you may not even have up to 1.4 trillion to spend. So it's good to correct you that, look, I'm not speaking for IBAS, but he didn't say 1.4 trillion. Then another thing, one thought just came to me. Okay, so what if the House of Assembly wants to domicile the budget as passed by the National Assembly? What if they just want the exact copy of what was sent to the National Assembly?
It is not Fubara you will be asking now.
No, maybe want
you
to
understand?
Maybe want to domesticate it.
No, Mr. Ige, we need to call. If that is what they want, you cannot be asking Fubara. The same way he came back from suspension, all of them are come back together.
No, the Assembly, now, it is the hold on. It is the responsibility of the executive to present appropriation bill. So maybe, I'm just guessing, please.
At the discretion of executive.
Hold on. No, it's mandatory. It's not discretion.
No. Discretion meaning timing.
No, there's even a limit. There's a limit to that timing. There is a time to which you must present the budget. Okay. So it's mandatory that a budget, because it's a law. That's why they call it appropriation.
This conversation will cross over, and I don't mean for you to lose your train of thought. You are executive. I'm House of Assembly, right?
Sure.
Good. Am I the one that will tell you to come and give appropriation bill, or you are the one that will bring appropriation bill to me? Now, who initiates the process?
The House of Assembly is saying that these demands are in line with terms of settlement.
We were not in terms of settlement. It was a closed door settlement now. They did not allow us to enter.
But the House of Assembly is now revealing some of the terms of settlement. That look, as part of the settlement with the president or with all the stakeholders, so to say, look, this were the. Now, I'm reading a statement as issued from the House of Assembly. That look, these things we are saying were part of what had been discussed, and part of what we had discussed was that look, the governor will present list of commissioners. If it is part of the agreement, it means that they may be fast forwarding.
Possibly. That is speculative, but Mr. Ige, unfortunately, I have to hold you there. We have to take this break. We will continue this conversation in the next hour. Please stay with us.